Hello everyone, it's Old Guardian here. In the latest Hearthstone patch we got a lot of new bounties, 40 new bounties overall, and I have now solved all 40 new bounties with multiple comps on Heroic, and yeah, that has been quite a lot of work. Anyway, in this video I want to talk a little bit about the encounter design in Mercenaries and where it's headed and why there might be a bit of a problem with this right now. So looking at these bounties, there are certain themes that keep repeating over and over. Typically there is an ad that has taunt, and then there's some other ads that are really priority targets, and then there's a big boss that's too big usually to be killed immediately. So you have to kill the ads first, but on the other hand you don't want to waste time on the ad with taunt because usually that ad is really unimportant. Then you really need to get to those other ads. And that's a theme that just keeps repeating over and over. Also pretty wide boards, plenty of opponents in all of these scenarios, and all of these things lead to very few Mercenaries teams being good at the bosses. There are a couple of related issues which I will elaborate more on this video. On the other hand, shout out to Crash, Lord of Turtling, by far the most interesting Sunken City bounty, doesn't rely on taunt minions, has minions that actually attack, big attacks, big cleave attacks. You're frantically trying to survive somehow and then get back at them. And this is by far the most unique encounter because it's the only encounter that really challenges the top comps in the game. Because when it comes to PvE, what are the top comps in the game? The top comps in the game are typically the ones that have good area of effect damage. We're talking Fire with Baron. We're talking Frost with adequate support for local R. We're talking Holy with Anduin. The top comps typically are ones that can deal a lot of damage over a wide variety of minions at the same time, and when almost all boss fights come with lots of minions on them and you really need to get damage into those, and there's taunt minions that you don't really care about damaging, then these sorts of comps really become the key. And spell casting really becomes the key. You want to get through that taunt. You don't want to hit that taunt minion, you want to hit the ones behind it. And this leads to the melee problem, because all these melee units, like, there are taunts that are on the way. So first you would have to clear that taunt before you can actually get to clear whatever you want. Whereas other mercenaries that are casting spells, they just hit immediately important target. Also, melee fighters, they take damage when they attack. You're doubling up the incoming damage. You take damage when the opponents do stuff, and you also take damage when you do stuff. And typically, the opponents have so much higher health pools that you just can't keep up in that sort of competition. And furthermore, most melee attacks only hit one target, so others are killing lots of tokens all over the place in a single turn, whereas you're stuck with hitting something, and if you hit into a small target, well, half of your attack damage is wasted. There are some things that melee comps have been doing in an attempt to keep relevant. The most relevant melee comp actually at the moment is Dragons, and that's because of Onyxia. Because Onyxia can remove the taunt from its target, and Onyxia attacks fast. So Onyxia will always be the first one to attack, it's going to remove that taunt, and then your other two melee characters can go in and actually kill the important target. But that still means that out of your three characters, one is spent on working on that taunt, whereas only two are left to attack the actual target. Then again, Varian sometimes also relevant. There are a couple of fights where Varian is really strong whenever the opponents are actually attacking, because then Varian can counter-attack. And when Varian counterattacks with retaliation, Varian also gets bigger and beefier, and then Varian actually deals damage that is comparable or even better than the regular AoE damage. And that coming from a red mercenary, a protector mercenary, is pretty good because there are not a lot of protectors that can deal such damage. Whereas the old king of melee comps, Orcs, which can have really huge stats, they're all reds or greens, protectors or fighters, really no casters that are worth mentioning for Orc comps, and they have no real ways to deal with taunt, and yeah, Orcs have just not been able to respond to the encounter design in Sunken City very well. Orcs also suffer if you have to bring any non-Orcs into the comp because they're highly synergistic, so you'd really want to bring 6 Orcs when you bring Orcs. Now compare that melee performance to Fire. Fire comp is perfect. Fire comp has freeze effect, thanks to Belinda's lesser water elemental, and that removes one opponent from the fight. So you're taking much less damage, and you're also not taking any damage because all of your damage comes from casting spells, so you're not taking any damage from your actions, and you're removing some of opponents' actions from the game. Fire has the biggest AoE damage, Baron deals insane amounts of damage, and if opponents are low health then Ragnar's deals even more. So yeah, that's just such huge damage output. And Fire also has all roles covered nowadays. They have a fighter, they have a caster, they have a protector. No matter what kind of opponents you're facing, Fire always has somebody who's really strong against that. No other comps can really contest this. Fire is the only comp that is actually capable of clearing every single bounty that was introduced in Sunken City. Crash is not ideal for Fire. Crash is trying to do things that challenge Fire, and it's somewhat successful. Fire is not perfectly consistent in Crash, but it can be done with Fire too. And then we have like Garrosh. In Garrosh fight there's even a net that gives fire resistance, so it's like supposed to counter fire, but no. Fire is actually one of the best comps to take down Garrosh. Really easily. So it's difficult to design encounters that would be difficult with fire, but that would still have multiple other solutions, because fire is just so incredibly strong. But okay, even if fire can do everything, if there's interesting things that can be done with other, more niche comps, then that would still make for interesting puzzles and challenges. However, what I believe is one of the most limiting decisions and most harmful decisions of late is moving equipment to be unlocked from heroic bounties. This actually, we're now seeing the full effect with all of these new bounties in Sunken City of this decision. Because the main thing this does is, it changes the question from, okay, what is the best 6-man comp that I can bring to this fight, to what is the best 5-man comp, or even what is the best 4-man comp that can take down this bounty. Because if there's 2 mercs that get equipment from that bounty, you want to get it done in a single go. Yeah, that's just the way it goes, that's life, that's how people work. They want to get it all done in a single go. And then you start to have to build 4-man comps. And 4-man comp means that the same comp has to be able to climb, and it has to be able to take down the boss. And that's fire. Yeah, so that's fire. So this means that we can no longer build comps like where we have 3 mercs that handle the climb, and then we have 3 mercs that are specifically there to kill the boss. That really weird Yankee compositions that are just there to take down the boss, but they could fail during the climb. But when that's no longer possible, then, well, you can't really design bosses for that either. And I think this is really the crux of the problem. This is what's currently preventing Mercenaries bosses from being interesting puzzles. They just cannot be designed that way because this is the limiting factor. And there would be multiple possible solutions to this. For example, you could not require the merc in your party. If you don't require the mercenary to be in your party, then it's enough that you bring any sort of comp. You can bring 6 mercenaries that you like, and you will get the unlock. Or you could move the requirement to unlock equipment to normal. So everyone can really easily get it. Just go through normal, and then you can do heroic that's much more difficult. Sort of like Drektar, even though not exactly like Drektar. Drektar has other issues. But Drektar normal is really easy. There's 2 adds less. And Drektar heroic, well, Drektar heroic is a encounter that can only be solved by fire on a consistent basis, so yeah, that kind of sucks too. Or you could add a new difficulty level, and in that new difficulty level, let's call it a legendary difficulty or something, in that difficulty level you could have these puzzles, and you would not have to unlock the equipment. Then again, what is the purpose of normal? Yeah, normal, heroic, legendary. 3 difficulty levels don't really make much sense if there's no reason for each of them to exist. So what I would most like to see would be to move the requirement to normal difficulty, so that everyone can just get them when they're progressing through the storyline. My secondary solution would be not requiring the mercenary in your party, then you could make heroics really interesting, but then again that would make it so much more difficult for budget players who don't have a lot of tools, and then they might not be able to solve the heroics, and then they don't get the equipment at all. And yeah, just tying that equipment to these heroics means that they cannot build these to be as interesting as encounters. And I have been trying to offer lots of alternative comps for all of these boss fights, but the main recommendation pretty much always just has to be fire, because it's by far the easiest way to do everything. It's not that I can't solve problems, it's just that there's one way that is such a superior answer to everything that it would be a crime not to mention that one. But yeah, 14 new bounties, it was a ton of work to go through them all and test them all with many different comps. And at the end I was left a little bit disappointed that the puzzle aspect wasn't really realized in this batch of bounties, but maybe next time. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed the content, please click the like button, subscribe to my channel, and check out my Twitch channel.